Alright, another response video to Joe at EconomicStability.org. Sorry about the other video being on the website, but if I go over 10 minutes, that's where they're going to end up. Just because I'm a little busy lately and I can't do editing and all the rest of it. Don't really got time for it. So anyway, alright, so I only got 846 on the camera this time, so I can't go over. Alright, let's just stay on inflation. There's two kinds of inflation. There's inflation that happens right away, bang, and there's inflation that's built up over time. It's waiting to crash. Alright, so the difference would be that if, like the stock market, if the stock market goes up, it's not going to have any immediate inflationary effect. Okay, even though there's a huge amount of increase in something, that increase won't affect any other part of the world because none of it is being converted into cash. It's all just an equity increase. And what happens is eventually that money runs to find a solid asset, not a paper asset, but a solid one. Instead of a 1/100th% of a business, or 1/1000th%, or whatever the idiotic numbers are there, they're going to go start looking for a hard asset, sugar, or wheat, or oil, or gas, or gold. They're going to try to find some place to put their money. And when there's a run on the commodities, that's when the inflation will show up. When they want to convert that crap money, that paper money, that paper's the wrong word, not transaction money, but investment, acknowledgement of their asset value. It's acknowledgement of asset value money. So it is deeds to stuff, but it's, as you know, a stock is a deed to nothing. It's a deed to some future value presumed to exist. You're basically investing in what you're going to gain if the company pays dividends for the next 30 years. But if the company goes bankrupt, obviously, in 10 years, that deed isn't worth anything. So you could have a stock. Google could be worth, your stock could be worth, $1 billion today, the amount of stock you hold. But if Google goes bankrupt in 10 years, that stock is actually worth nothing, because the company will never pay off to match the value of that stock, because it's all dependent on future earnings. But it's irrelevant to what we're talking about here, which is basically, I keep claiming there are assets behind this money, and you keep claiming there's not. The government just prints it. It isn't just printing. You said it again. Many trillions, I think that's the term you used. The government has printed many trillions of dollars. It hasn't. All right? You can say it has, but until you prove it to me, I say it hasn't. And it's really, and the atmosphere has gotten really polluted because right now they're doing things that are the same thing. All right? They've guaranteed a bunch of toxic assets, which is the same thing as printing money. They just haven't printed it yet. But when there is a run, okay, then it'll show up as inflation. But until the run, it's not going to show up, okay? But we gave them real money for crap, and that's a fact. And the government's going to try to make the crap worth something. So it's going to try to keep the growth engine going. It's going to try to keep the illusion of value out there, so then it can possibly, hopefully, get rid of these assets, okay, and be free of this junk and get its money back. All right, but it's not gonna. We know it's not gonna happen. First, they're not gonna be able to dress the pig up, in good enough party dress for anybody to date it, and so it ain't gonna happen. And worse, because it's not gonna happen, it's only gonna make the problem worse because now they're out all this money, that they're using to prop up something they can't prop up. So they're just gonna throw more money at the banks, say, give it to borrowers, give it to lenders, give it to borrowers, and so they can buy houses they can't afford. So we can elevate the price of the houses, so we can dump on the market a big giant hunk of garbage. And maybe somebody will buy these houses because they'll now have value from these people that can't pay the mortgages, which really doesn't make any sense. Rich people aren't going to be stupid enough to buy a bunch of fucking garbage housing and watch the same bubble explode. They just saw it explode. Who's stupid enough to get into that mess? So that it just is it's a fail strategy, but it really muddies the water. So you have to go back a couple of years before the government really did start printing money by guaranteeing a bunch of crap. Um, and before 2 years ago, this whole fractional reserve thing, it had worked for 70 years. Um, People were still getting ripped off. They're still paying 4 times too much for a house, and their cars had gotten way expensive. So obviously, Greenspan and these other assholes hadn't regulated interest rates consistent with actual commodity prices, the actual prices people were paying. They had some consumer price index, which was crap, because they didn't put the real deal into the damn index. What people were paying taxes on, like cigarettes, and how people's lifestyle, what they were paying for. So yeah, if they put VCRs or something in the index, well yeah, then consumers have done really well because they got dirt cheap. But if they put things like houses in the index, consumers have gotten killed. And they don't make up for past mistakes. They always just look at a year. They don't look at the 10 years that they failed to regulate and how much inflation, how much value people have lost in those 10 years. So they never make up for past mistakes, which is another huge flaw in their regulatory mission. But anyway, yeah, the argument on inflation is just that, look, the inflation that we've created through the fractional reserve system hasn't even shown up yet. But your inflation for just printing money, that'll show up immediately. Because immediately there's going to be a bunch of money in the system. People are going to have cash that doesn't have an asset value behind it. And if I go back to the fundamental what makes a currency work example, how you create a new currency. If you create a new currency, you'd have a bank. And the bank would say, be like a pawn shop or something. Say, you come in with a thing, an asset, and we'll give you money for it. So if you give me the deed to your asset, we'll take the asset deed, like it's a pile of gold or a house or something of real value, and we'll give you cash. And that's how an economy would start. That's how a currency would start. And so the idea that it's created by debt is perfectly rational. It's perfectly sensible because the money has an asset tied to it somewhere. There's a source, and you can go trace the money to its source, and there's something at the source. But if you just print it and throw it into the economy, that's inflation. Unless you're just pumping enough to take care of real growth, not growth in stock markets and everything else. So in your world, there's going to be very little margin for this printed money. There's not going to be. You're not going to be able to include stock market assets or house deeds. I mean, you said it again. The whole point of fractional reserve banking is that a house deed has value. Under non-fractional reserve value, you have to consider the deed valueless, and you have to wait till the person pays the loan back before you can lend any more money back. You have to wait till the cash comes back in before you can lend any new cash out. You can't convert the house deed into an asset if there's not fractional reserve banking. So the house deed is garbage as a functional instrument of the bank. It means nothing. I'm not saying it has no value. It ultimately has value after 30 years and after somebody has given you all the cash back, but not till then, under your system. And under the fractional reserve system, you're just acknowledging that you have an asset, and so you may print money because you have an asset you've covered. And it's not printing money. The member banks lend the money at a very low interest rate, commensurate to what the asset values are. And they're just saying, well, here, we will lend you the money on that collateral that you possess, so you can re-lend more money. And in theory, I mean, like I said, it's a crime that people are paying double interest in a sense, but that's not going to kill a system. And what's killed this system, again, which the subject you don't want to get onto, is that the rich have gotten too rich. The stock market grew, and as it grew, it's just an indication of their money becoming more and more valuable, their control of assets becoming more and more significant. That's what all this debt is built out of, the fact that they own everything, and people must rent from them. That's what all the consumer debt represents, is people